And we're live. Hey everyone. Today I thought I would make a video about the importance of the in-position player c-betting in a heads-up spot after the flop has been checked through and the in-position player has declined to bet. It's a pretty common node that you're going to face in many situations with just like single Broadway, like King A3 in this example, but also very similar in other King High boards that are of a similar disconnected nature. So today I thought we would take a look at when the ace comes on the turn, and the ace is a very polarizing card for both players' ranges, where both players will make a lot of top pair, but the in-position player is going to obviously retain the nut advantage with the ace-king, ace-ace combos. So that's going to heavily dictate his frequency of how often he's going to bet as well as the sizing. So as you can kind of see in this example here, when the ace comes down and the the out of position player is declined to bet, we can look real quickly at that node. As you can see, he's going to do a lot of like merge betting with many different hand classes. And this has to do a lot with the fact that he's holding the equity advantage when the flop is checked through and in position is declined to c-bet. When the ace comes down, it causes a polarization between the two ranges. The in-position player is not really interested in reopening the action, considering he's at a equity disadvantage, but he is holding the polarity advantage. Not like a massive polarity advantage in the top 10%. As you can see, there's a lot of equalization, but kind of within that 70 to like 80 to 90 region, he's holding an advantage. And this is going to cause him to be very selective with his c-bet strategy. So why don't we dive into that? So here we can kind of take a look at the fact that except for like very extreme cases of ace-ace looking to slow play, heavily blocking the calling range, for the most part we're going to have no slow plays that happen. The in-position player is very interested in building the pot now. The urgency to try to play for stacks is starting to really creep up on him. So when he is going to c-bet, he's going to use it for a very large size. I gave the solver here 75, 100, 150. It's possible that if we have like even a more geometric sizing, he might work that in, but I don't know if it's going to be a very frequent part of the strategy. I mean, we can obviously take a quick look. My guess is not too much compared to 150, because 150 is already quite large, but could be wrong. Yeah, so it's not really too much part of the strategy. I think this has to do with the fact that the board brings a flush draw and semi connected with the straights now with the queen 10, jack 10s. So the in-position player won't hold the nut advantage on several rivers now. So it's not really mimicking a pure polar versus bluff catcher situation where he's interested in just going 2e, 2e. He kind of wants to develop a betting range now for a large size, but not necessarily too massive, and gain EV that way. So we'll just kind of eliminate this at the moment. It's a little slow today, obviously. Okay. So yeah, polarized distribution here, starting with two pairs, a lot of top pairs, and you can see that the top pairs are really built in a linear fashion. The stronger the kicker, the more we're going to bet. The less good the kicker, the more we're going to check. Obviously, we share a lot of these combos with the out of position players, so we're not really pushing range polarity advantage with these hands. We're just going to build a pot unnecessarily if we bet these combos too much. Also, we need to have some, we have a lot of like mid-strength region here, as you can see, second pair, third pair, low pairs. And these type of hands are not interested in putting any more money in, so it's kind of crucial that we arrive on the river with some top pairs in when we decide to check back, which is going to be a very frequent action here, as you see, 80% of our range. Or, yeah, 80% frequency with our range. So when we do decide to take the bet line, the out of position player is probably going to fold around MDF. Okay, slightly more than MDF. The minimum defense frequency would be 60% versus a 150. So we have a slight overfold. And I think that makes sense because even though the out of position player before this bet is holding the equity advantage, once he faces his bet of 150, his equity realization has really shrunk. You can see this like polarized distribution now. So he won't, even when he calls this bet here, he won't get to realize the equity of all his hands on the river because he will face another bet semi-frequently. So the out of position player decides to shed a little bit more of its weakest combos or mid-strength combos that won't realize the equity. Not a huge part here, but something to kind of keep in mind when looking at the solution. His calling range is going to be okay. Well, the threshold's around third pair here, and we can see Roos AI solver here prefers certain combos over others. This is likely to do with the c-bet range of not blocking not blocking certain combos of diamonds or hearts, which will continue to barrel. Not super important. All these hands are in and around zero. Definitely you can get a little bit more granular, but it's not kind of like, we're not taking away the small granular details here. We're trying to take away a larger picture. So yeah, around third pair is kind of where we're going to draw the line here. And we have some second pair that's kind of holding suit preference, but yeah, not too important. So his landing range here is going to be like heavily filtered, and it's going to be consisting around lots of flush draws of the nuts, some gut shots. So depending on the river texture, the out of position player is going to either leapfrog ahead, or he's going to fall very far behind with only a bluff catching range. And then we'll kind of enter in a polar versus bluff catcher toy game on a brick. So why don't we take a look at that first. So we'll say a call, and then we'll take a brickish river that doesn't have any equity shifting polarizations. So no straights, no flushes, 7 hearts. Out of position player is going to check full range, or should check full range. Yes, does check full range. And again, this has to do with the fact that we've now entered into a polar versus bluff catcher situation. So we can see that, right around the 50% mark, we have this jump of hands that have, 20 something percent equity, and then boom, jumping up to 75 plus to 80 to like 90 to 100%. So, and then the out of position player just with a very large density of hands that are in and around 50%. He does have some nutted hands, and that's because the out of position player should have been playing well with trapping. In reality, some players will fast play their value too much on the turn. They won't check enough. And if that's the case, then the out of position or the in position player will be able to bet more frequently for all ins, not fearing running into any high equity traps. So we'll head back to the strategy. We should see the in position player use quite a few all ins. So we do see that. It's a very heavily polarized range here. If we kind of look at the breakdown graph and the Manhattan graph, you can see that the range is heavily polarized. We have hands that kind of start around the 90% equity margin all the way through to 100%, and then starting to bluff hands that are bottom 10%. Sets, and the two pairs is kind of where we draw the line. Roos is chosen between all in and 67% for like a mid largest size bet. I think you could possibly not just play 67 all in. You could kind of find another large bet in here. Maybe like 150 again will be mixed in. But definitely we have the top of a range preferring to go all in. Yeah, okay, so again, yeah, we have this 150 now. Sorry, I'll take this off. We have the 150 and the all in, and it's kind of split between the two. But again, the top of our range and the bottom of our range are very favoring the all in. Okay, no, the bottom of our range doesn't favor it. Thinks the EV is very equal amongst everything, which is fine. So you can play just like 150, 200, or you can play some all-ins. But I think all-ins are practically going to work a little bit better when you're using a polarized strategy here. It's just harder for a human to call down versus the all-in than it is to call versus the 150. But yeah, feel free to play 150 or 200 if you want to use that type of strategy more often, or you think it's better exploitatively for constructing your ranges about how your opponents will respond. But we're going to just take away the 150 for now, just to kind of get back to a more simplified situation where we're going to either value bet for like mid-large size, or we're going to go all in. So we were talking about the value region. So most top pairs are not interested in going all in. They don't hold enough equity. They won't get called enough times by worse to make it an attractive option. Our two pairs are probably going to be very linear. The better the two pair, the more we go all in. Okay, not quite the case. Ace-8 is preferring to jam over Ace-King. And I guess this has to specifically do with blocker effects that Ace-8 unblocks. Possibly King-8 or like King-7 suited. That can call the all-in. And Ace-King does block that. So there are a little bit of blocker situations happening here. We can definitely see if that's the case. It's definitely a little slow today. Yeah, so okay, so if we're looking at second pairs, okay, not really the case. We have some like sliver calls. So that's why it could be slightly worse. Ace-King, just because of these like very, very low frequency hands. And then yeah, with the two pairs, like we were saying, the King-7, King-8 that are mixing call and folds. The Ace-King blocks these hero calls, King-3. Where Ace-8 unblocks all of them, so Ace-8's a little bit better of a jam. And then our set of 8s just wants to go all in, unblocking all Ace-X 2 pair, King-X 2 pair. No mate hand region. It's probably going to be things that, yeah, very much don't interfere with the calling range. So we have like 10-5, 9-4, all these like very low offsuit, some suited trash. They don't have removal effects to the calling range, but they also don't unblock the folding range. So they're kind of like neutral in that regard. As you can see, you know, like they're not for a very high EV jam, which can be psychologically hard for a human being to implement, because you know, like this bet is only supposed to earn me 0.7 of a big blind, but I had to risk 450% pot just to win that 0.7. So it can be tough at times. But we don't really have anything else to bluff. We have a significant value range here that wants to bet, so the EV of these hands in theory are going to be fine. And in practice versus most opposition, the EV is actually higher. You won't see any of those frequency calls by King X as often. Some well studied players will likely flick in the call at some frequency if they understand that you're aggressive. But for the most part, you're going to outperform. Yeah, you're getting a massive amount of overfolds. For the most part, even a lot of players are going to fold top pair no kicker here. So this is likely going to outperform quite a bit. And you should not shy away from bluffing at these, probably even closer to full frequency, because they're balanced on a knife's edge here, that even a slight overfold by the imposition player is going to just increase the frequency and the EV of these hands. Yeah, so to summarize this quick overview is, when we have a card that's very polarizing for the two ranges at play here, you're going to definitely choose a very polarized strategy where you're going to look to bet for an overbet and then have a region of going all a region that you'll want to just shove on the river. We don't want to bet a very frequent betting strategy, and this is like something that a lot of players will make the mistake. I know I made this mistake a lot in the past, is you see a card that's good for your range and you think that increases your betting frequency. But not all cards that are decently good for your range are equal. Some will give you a lot more of a mid to high strength part of a range, and others will just have a very polarizing effect where you have a very top of range advantage, and then all your middling hands become very marginal in equity and are not looking to put any more money into the pot. And you can see that here with this polarized distribution. Again, if we look at the Manhattan graph. Yeah, so I hope that was helpful to everybody. If you guys like this type of analysis, please leave me a comment. If there's anything you think I can improve on, also please leave me a comment. And thanks for watching.